Well, good day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and you gators and grannies, to this Sunday afternoon edition of The Big Puzzle. My name is Barry Prince. I'm coming to you live from my kitchen here in northern British Columbia, broadcasting through the facilities of People's Internet Radio and being simulcast on shakeandwakeradio.com. We are viewer-supported stations, folks, so if you like what people are trying to bring you for content and what we're trying to do at these stations, I know times are a little bit tough right now, but if you can reach into your pocket, throw a few bucks into the kitties, I know that the people running the stations would much appreciate it. And always a big thanks to Steve Roberts for putting up with me every week and producing my shows. I'm joined today by Wayne Peters and Derek Storie, Noble Savages and What's Up Canada. And these two gentlemen are very, very active in Canada right now, trying to wake people to what's going on with the insanity in our country. And last time I had these two gentlemen on, we really had a good conversation. So I'm looking forward to this one. Thanks for joining me today, guys. And as I've said before, I like to start my conversations off with your pet peeve of the week. So I'm going to start with Wayne, and I'm going to ask him what's his pet peeve of the week, and then I'm going to pass the talking stick over to Derek. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having us on again, Barry. It's always a pleasure to talk to people that are inspired and motivated to do what's right, not what's easy, and that's what makes the difference in the world going forward. If we want to see change, we have to be change. Now, my pet peeve of the week, I'm going to start off with a little bit of an insider joke. And moving forward in life, when are single people out there that are trying to navigate the world in this pandemic, when are you going to be ready to add your vaxxed status to your dating profile? It's going to be a qualifier in the coming days if we accept the new normal, right?
Well, I hope not. But we seem to be definitely going in that direction.
So that's kind of where my brain is at moving forward. Is
I've got my certificate,
right? Am I going to be safe to date if I say no to the mandatory vaccines?
Good question, Wayne. Hey Barry, how's it going?
Good, Derek.
My biggest pet peeve, I've been I haven't really watched the news or anything, but every morning the propaganda news channels on the CP24 and the United Nations is really pushing hard to dissolve our human rights as Canadians, and that's really my big pet peeve right now.
Well, that's been going on for a while now, Derek, but now we really see it in our faces.
Oh yeah, it stands out like a sore thumb. It's right out there.
The sad thing about that, though, really is a lot of Canadians yet don't see that agenda being played out in our society. Unfortunately, the mainstream media doesn't do us any justice in how they portray the United Nations or what they're trying to do in this country, and some of the going-ons behind the scenes, how the United Nations is involved with the World Health Organization, how the World Health Organization is a total communist organization that's telling us how to handle a pandemic that is absolutely destroying our society right now. I mean, there's a lot of rabbit holes when we start talking about the United Nations. And they're not a good word.
The interesting part of this all is that this entire lockdown charade has created a captive audience for anybody that's asking questions. They've got time on their hands, and the resources are coming to light, and the truth is coming to light. So it can't be denied, and sooner or later the train of truth is going to collide with the train of the WHO because there's no truth in it. It is 100% a communist organization attempting the largest hostile takeover in human history on a global scale. And our mainstream media we know they're accomplices to this infiltration and this crime. Too many people are giving them excuse and license and leeway, saying they're just pawns, they're just tools. The fact is they are selling their souls, and there's going to come a point in history, whether it's not just in Canada, this is happening on a global scale, where they're going to have to decide which side of history they're going to be on, and there's going to be a price to pay, consequences for these decisions.
I hope we see a lynch mob walking into CBC one day and doing to these people what needs to be done to traitors. I mean, treason is punishable by hanging, buddy. I think we should bring that law back into Canada because we have so many acts of treason being perpetrated on us a daily basis that maybe if we hung a few of these people might think about this a little bit differently.
Well, it'd definitely straighten out our government, that's for sure.
Wouldn't it? I mean, you really think about it. I mean, I'm not a traitor to the country, so I don't have anything to worry about. But anybody that's contemplating treasonous acts or is involved in that right now are going to think twice. Well, but of course, we don't have that kind of system in Canada. We have 2 laws in Canada, one for us and one for the chosen few.
Here's the sad reality of that, though, is you say that with absolute conviction in your heart, and I say the same thing, and so does Derek. But when we look at the coming rule of law, we are now the traitors guilty of treason.
We are in a police state in Canada right now.
We're at.
Well, we're in a police state. We're in a full-blown police state right now, and people don't see it because it's got lipstick on it still. Soon the lipstick's going to be off.
Do we remember who it was in Canada that got rid of capital punishment?
That would have been Diefenbaker, I believe.
I think it was later than that.
Mulrooney?
I'm thinking it was right around Pierre's time, was it not? Which would explain.
I could Google that and find out, but I don't have it off the tip.
I pose this question to the audience, to the world too. Take a look at some of these things, right? These people that have been manipulating our system. This is where we're at now. It didn't just happen overnight. It didn't just happen with Junior. This has been a long succession of crimes against the people that by others that have sold their souls or a portion of it for a few shillings. And now we've gotten to the point where that cannot continue in the eyes of the people. And this happens every few millennia on Earth, and I think this is the opportunity of the people again in history to set things straight, as happens from time to time.
Well, we could see that across Canada. Everywhere, everybody's starting to stand out. Quebec was out today. We were out in Toronto yesterday. Vancouver was out. Calgary was out. I seen Saskatoon was out. So people are ready for this.
The biggest obstacle we face right now, of course, is the mainstream media. That a good percentage of our population still goes home at the end of the day, turns on CBC and drinks the Kool-Aid. And figures that's what's happening in our world right now. Until we can break that paradigm and get people away from mainstream. Because you know and I know that all mainstream media is controlled by about 8 families here in the world today. Mm-hmm. They control every aspect of everything that anybody ever hears on mainstream media. So that being said, what chance do we have for real journalism in Canada? We don't.
I would challenge that to take it a step further in that it's fear. It's fear that is dictating everybody's lives and the control, be it the fear of the bug, the fear of persecution from our government for saying anything contrary, including any almost 100% of the mainstream media and a large portion of the second tier and the alternative media. I mean, there are even subjects we cannot discuss that are truthful because it's automatic suicide for us, right? So it's the fear of that. Any individual that speaks out contrary or questions the narrative being stuffed down our throat is automatically swarmed on by hives of paid propagandists or digital stormtroopers under these false NGO controls that dictate and control everything from the puppet politicians that are either blackmailed or bribed to the mainstream media corporations to the law firms right to the higher tiers of government and control. Fear dictates our lives and how we respond to it at this point.
Well, the good news in Canada is now we get to hear the call to prayer in the morning outside Moss.
Oh, now you're trying to get started.
I mean, that really made my day when I heard that, man. Wow, what a great society this is when Islam is raised to a pedestal and allowed to have the call to prayer going out of their mosques at volumes of volumes that would get us put in jail immediately, and our so-called elected officials are allowing this to go on. What a pile of crap that is, guys. Unbelievable. If that doesn't wake Canadians up, I don't know what to say.
With this virus, it was kind of sad that, not even Christians can get together in their cars and do service, but they can get together and have a call to prayer.
They're still having meetings in their mosques, and the government and the police are just looking the other way. This standard is so in our face. Why aren't Canadians out there screaming at the top of their lungs? Where these guys are allowed to get together and have their church meetings. Our Christian church meetings are shut down. We're persecuted and put in jail if we do. And they're allowed to have this call to prayer blasted out of loudspeakers, out of their mosque. This is beyond insanity, folks. This is Canada. This is not Islam. We don't confine. We don't condone. We don't go by your cultures in Canada. We have cultures in Canada that have been here for years and years and decades, and that's what we live by. And all of a sudden we see this stuff going on in society. This drives me nuts. Why aren't people screaming? I don't get it.
I know, right?
I don't get it. I really don't. Is it just me or what?
This whole thing is a timing thing. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Right. This is exactly what our infiltrators are doing, and where they have got us to the point where we're too scared and afraid to speak out about anything. This is now another tier and level of absolute psychological terrorism. That's exactly what this is. If you look at any terrorist handbook, what do? They lock you in the dark and they pump horrible music to you 24 hours a day, right? Because it affects our psyche. And here, in a nation that all their number one intent is to break the word of God and the word of law in our nation, which is where our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and let me read this right from the script to remind people where we are failing. Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law, these guys are breaking everything that is righteous and rightful, and our freedom of our nation in Canada, they are smashing it. And the next thing is, mothers, if you've got daughters, you better start shopping for burqas and hijabs, because soon this is the next step. When Christian preachers are getting arrested for walking down the street or getting beat down in parks by hundreds of anti-procreation mobs, let me just say that so that I don't get crucified for it. Mm-hmm. This is where we're at. Like,
we're seeing this. We got people being pulled out of their houses in Canada.
Yeah,
by police. And now we got roadblocks being set up across the country. COVID-19 roadblocks, checkpoints. I mean, we're in Nazi Germany, 1937, guys.
How often? Or 1984.
How often do we see a cop anymore that doesn't look like he's a
ready to go to war?
Team? We have completely militarized police force. What on earth does any Canadian cities need with tanks? Why do police need tanks against the civilians of our population now?
They've rolled them out in every city in Canada.
Every one.
Yep.
Every one of them has bulletproof armored vehicles ready to go to war. Well, that's not for riot control, guys. That's not a SWAT team. That's for war against your citizens, and it's in your face.
Why, if you get pulled over for a routine check stop at this point, do we have guys with assault rifles and tactical armor dealing with this stuff?
I know. Fear, buddy. It's called the virus of fear.
Well, that's exactly
one thing that plagues our society, and it controls society. We've seen what it did with COVID-19 when the World Health Organization came out and declared this a worldwide pandemic. Everybody just about fell over. They ran into their houses and just hid under their couches in fear. They fell for it. They drank the Kool-Aid. Yeah. But people don't take 10 minutes to go and look at who's running the World Health Organization. If you want to destroy a country, you don't need an army, man. You don't. And China is proving that over and over again.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at every aspect of how we're tied into China now. If that doesn't drive people crazy, they're making our prescription drugs. They're rolling out 5G. Coronavirus, where'd that come from? Well, we know that lab is being supported by the Canadian government, that Fauci in the States bypassed legislation in the States to give them funding. I mean, if you follow the money and follow the trails, this whole situation just stinks to high heaven. But normal people, they go home and they listen to CBC. We've got to break that, man. We really do. We've got to get this information out to the public. That's why shows like this are really, really important. Go ahead.
Well, people have to understand that the globalists are using this pandemic, this virus, to beat us down into slaves where they want us. Where we obey and and suffer, and we're already suffering. Like me and Wayne just came back from Alberta, and Wayne can tell you about Drayton Valley because he grew up there.
I didn't grow up there, but I spent 10 years in one of the fastest growing communities in Alberta. And after going back here in a few short years, driving through there a couple of weeks ago now, there was hotels boarded up along Main Street, homes abandoned. They don't even bother to put for sale signs on them because the entire newspaper front to back is nothing but for sale signs, and there is nobody to buy. Gas plants shut down, locked down, that will take months if and when they ever reopen. That would take months to get back online. So this entire thing has been orchestrated for a very, very long time to put us in this destabilized position where we are in fear of everything and every blade of grass. You step out your door, your neighbors are reporting you, and yet none of it, when you start to look at the facts, the math, the numbers, none of it can corroborate what they're forcing onto us. There's going to be shortages that are absolutely unfathomable to Canadians, because the only time we ever saw this stuff was in a World War II history novel or a Russian history novel. That's the only place that we've ever seen this stuff before. So Canadians haven't even got begun to understand the power that's being leveraged against them. And the biggest mistake that we're making is we are not adjusting and evolving our definition of war. We only think of war as storming the beaches of Normandy, when in actual fact, we are in the greatest war of our lives right now, because that war is digital, it is economical, it is sociological. They are attacking us at every level because they don't have to shoot at us to beat us now.
Absolutely. That's what I was saying. You don't need an army to defeat a country. And China is setting a perfect example of that to the rest of the world. Yet the common person still doesn't see it, Wayne, because it hasn't greatly affected their life yet. But
I think
we're seeing a change now. We're starting to see a change now where this economy that we're dealing with, well, it's going to really have a trickle-down effect here in the next 3 months. People are going to really start seeing what's going on. But, of course, everybody's going, Yahoo, we're getting free money from Trudeau. I got my $2,000 check. Well, people got to realize that every check that you take from the government gives them a little bit more power over the people. That what we're setting up is a tyrannical government where the public is going to be conditioned to depend on the government to take care of them during these tough economic times. And if these tough economic times continue, they think the government will be there to bail them out. Well, this is a bubble, and the bubble isn't going to last forever. It's going to burst. And the trickle-down effect on society is just going to blow people's minds. They don't see that coming when they think this is all a joke. Some of them do. And to get through them, it's a tough thing to do. But I see we're making headway. I really do.
We've made an astronomical amount of headway in the last 2 months, I would say, and the thing that we're not, maybe because we're so focused and intense on the fires that we're fighting right in front of our face, we have to take a pause sometimes and do an inventory check. And what I mean by that is, when we take a look at what happened last year with that convoy that went across the country, there was only 300 people that were involved in that, basically, that made the trip, but there were millions that watched all over the world, and there was tens of thousands that came out and supported this convoy, which means there are people that are awake. They are lit. They are aware. Even if they don't know all of the facts, they know that our junk is seriously broken. They are looking at everything, and they are trying to be good citizens and play within the rules and boundaries that we've been cornered into, and thinking, well, if we vote this way or we vote that way, and this thinking has to be abandoned, because we can no longer vote our way out of this. If that isn't abundantly clear at this point, this is a major problem that we have to overcome, is we cannot vote our way out of communism. Communism is here. The question is how long we will stand for the implementation of it. Can we stop it before it's completely implemented? And that's a choice that people are going to have to make on their own. And I think that we're seeing a shift. People are awake. They were silent. People are asking now more about what can we do. Yeah. They know it's broken. What can we do?
I hear it all the time. I have people stating to me all the time that, I know there's some really nefarious stuff going on in our government, but what am I going to do about it? I'm just one person. Well, you got a lot more power than you realize, folks. You do. And all we got to do is reach out and embrace that. That
Absolutely.
fear. I keep getting back to the biggest weapon that society, that these people behind the curtains, I'll call them that, are using against society is the fear virus. The biggest virus we have in society, where society is at a point now, in Canada especially, that people are scared to speak out because they're either going to get fired or they're going to get arrested. We're at a point now that if we don't stand up en masse against this, it's going to have so much power. It's gaining power every day that the window of opportunity to stop it, I honestly believe, will come. But we still have that window right now. So this is a time where I see people all of a sudden want to engage in conversation. People are more open now to stuff that they never even contemplated in their life, of how evil the forces are that we're working against. They're actually starting to embrace those, even though it makes them feel uncomfortable. I got a couple examples of a guy here. He's just going, he's talking to me now. He's going, I'm going home and looking at some of this stuff on the internet. He says, these people are lunatics. These are guys that didn't really look at this a little while ago. So it is really having an effect on waking people up. That's the one encouraging thing I see happening right now, and I see it accelerating. But we really right now got to put our foot right to the floor, guys, because I believe they're going to really try and shut the internet down. That's the next step. They know they got to silence us. They know that people are waking up. They're monitoring everything that's going on. They're listening. We actually, we should invite them to this. I should make a point of starting my shows off, inviting them to the show, because we know they're listening to this conversation right now. Either CSIS or the FBI or some agency in government is monitoring this show right now. So whoever's listening in, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
I should make a point, because we know they're there. You know what? Maybe these guys that are listening in on our conversation, maybe we'll have an influence on their thinking. Maybe they'll start going, hey, these guys are actually making some sense. Maybe I'm a pawn. Maybe I'm just a pawn one step up the ladder, and that's all you are.
Yeah.
You folks that are listening in right now, that's all you are. Because when the time comes, they're gonna quash you just a little bit later than us. But you're not invited to the big party. Period.
You know what the greatest antidote to fear is?
Knowledge.
Courage.
All fear.
Courage is a very strong antidote, and it's really easy to embrace too. You just have to take that step. That's all you got to do to embrace that.
Well, a lot of people in Canada, I see a lot of Canadians that don't have that. Wayne, I ask myself, where are the Canadians with blood coursing through their brains that was put there by our forefathers that went and died to have what we have right now, and we're giving it away. They're turning in our graves right now. I say to people that this isn't an obligation. This is an absolute duty to your country right now. If we see evil coming, that we've got to stop it.
You know what it is? I personally, I think.
What is it? I'd like to know, man. I don't got that part figured out, because I see it because it's right in our face, man.
I think it's intelligence. We are a smart nation, and we're not going to do stupid stuff. And when we see other people getting hammered, we sit back and watch, and we wait, and we look for that window of something that makes sense to us, that is worth taking the risk for. This is the thing that keeps me inspired and going, because I know I've talked to tens of thousands of Canadians from coast to coast, and they're awake, they're lit, but they're not sticking their neck out yet, because they haven't got that thing that they see Canadians can and will understand enough to collectively come together on. I'm not going to say unite on, because that's too strong of a word. It actually is, because when you are uniting on something, it means you're putting something else secondary, right? So we have to look at it a little bit differently. And what can we collectively do that we don't have to negate anything else we're sworn to or that we believe in, but what can we collectively do together to oppose this? And this is where I think that we're coming to the point here now where we have to start to understand the difference of education and versus training for action. And we've been very, very strongly trying to educate. And we've gotten enough people out there, I believe, that are educated, but they're silent. They're waiting for that training for action. And this boils down to something that I was talking about on the show the other day, that fired you up, and I wasn't offline for more than 10 seconds, and you called, and it's about the jurisdiction. Yeah. Right? There are all kinds of examples out there in the rest of the world of how to stop this. And we just haven't engaged in the right methodology yet, with the right tactics and collectively with the right power to do the things we need to do. And this is where I think this is where the shift needs to go from, okay, we know everything's broken. Stop trying to teach me about every little brick and nook and cranny in this giant megastructure. How can we turn the power off? And that, again, boils down to jurisdiction. When we're too busy talking to our municipal representatives, they have no control or power or jurisdiction over making the change we want to see. We talk to our provincial legislators, they don't really have any power, and they're basically answering to the same master as the federal level. So we have to reach a collective action of going to a higher jurisdiction. And this is a little bit tough for people to wrap their brains around.
Explain it.
It's understanding this, that everybody and every country in this world still has jurisdictions within their own nation, but they are part of a larger collective. And as much as it makes me cringe to even mention those two letters, the United Nations, but the United Nations also has a set of laws and systems that they must comply to within their own agency. They have a legal agency of their own, right? That their nations within that organization must comply to. And this is how other nations, when Trudeau signed that migration compact, we got no say, none whatsoever. But other nations completely backed out of it by stating one simple sentence. This threat does not comply with our future of self-determination or our sovereignty. That's under Article 2 and Article 7 of the UN Human Rights Declaration. So within their own laws, they have given us what we need to tell them to go pound sand. Trudeau is never going to do that. Our Conservative Party is never going to do that because they're a part of it. They wrote the Paris Accord. Harper is as guilty as Trudeau is when it comes to all of this junk. And nobody that's within that current system is going to change that because they've all sworn oaths to that same system. So they fall under the rules of the jurisdiction of their masters. So they will not do that. So this is where it becomes up to the people to exert enough resistance and pressure to demand this change. We have this power. In the court of public opinion, we can do this if we choose to do this, and they cannot stop this. So now this is not asking them for permission. This is not being compliant to our party status. This has to be from a national level, from an individual level, taking responsibility for our roles in this nation. If we choose to have the choice of future self-determination, we have to demand this. And I see all kinds of groups, whether they realize it or not, are coming together to understand an action is required. An intervention is way overdue, but they don't exactly know how. Well, this is a path forward that I'm going to tomorrow. I've got something special planned to help people with this, to deliver this message of understanding and action. But this is where I see our way out, is through jurisdiction and understanding it.
Well, I see millions of Canadians right now at the breaking point, and they're looking for a mechanism to stop the insanity in our country. When you talked about this the other day, Wayne, it really sparked interest. To me, it sounds like something that we can all get involved in, no matter what your religion or what your political stance is. If we want to stop the insanity in this country, we have to unify under one common issue. And this sounds like it could be it. So I'm going to support it, and I'm talking about it. I'm talking to other people about this already. I think it's something that we could embrace and actually make a change. We have to do something. And like you said, mainstream politicians in this country, are all on board with the United Nations agenda. Even though they don't appear to be on the outside, we can talk about any of the political parties in right now. Just the fact that the Conservative Party in Canada still supports the Paris Climate Accord tells you exactly what that party's all about. They might say they're not on board with the UN agenda, but they're just another head on the snake is what they are. We're not going to get changed through the political system or the political parties in Canada. We have to go a different route, and this sounds like a very logical route. What do you think about it, Derek? Got to get you in here for a few comments, buddy. You're sitting there.
Well, I think people have to realize, the connections to the different political programs and stuff like that for sure, because the politics has turned into a smokescreen for the globalists. So no matter who stands and represents it, is still holding that idea of a one world government, and we cannot have that. I don't consent to it. I hope you don't.
Well, I don't think any Canadian would if they really knew what was going on. I keep saying that. I don't think Canadians understand the danger that the country's in right now because of course, the power of mainstream media.
Well, did you see the big controversy now with Jason Kenney now that the China's really giving him a hard time because of those two pandas that are in the Calgary zoo?
No, I didn't see that. I haven't seen that one yet. What's going on now with that? There's a million stories every day hitting the feeds here. I haven't seen that one yet, but nothing would surprise me. So fill me in.
It's beyond ludicrous where people don't really understand the control that China has and exerts. They literally own every panda in the world. You can't own a panda. We send millions of dollars to China to have their two pandas in our zoo here, and now because of Trudeau thanking Taiwan for their masks, the Chinese government has demanded their pandas back, and they're not sending food over anymore for the pandas, and the bamboo that we get in Vancouver is too costly to ship to Calgary twice a week to feed the pandas, so they're going to starve their pandas to death here in Canada until Jason Kenney sends them back.
Well, I think this should be the conversation at every dinner table in Canada. What a great distraction, eh?
Right? I thought I had to bring it up.
These guys really are the masters of distraction. They pull out the panda routine, and that's going to tug at our heart for a little bit. We'll forget all about the destruction of the family businesses and the millions of Canadians right now that are pulling their hairs out.
Meanwhile, we've got two Canadians being held for more than 500 days as hostages in China. I demand we
don't worry about those guys. They're nothing.
Right. So, Rebel did a piece on this the other day where Kean was talking about, okay, well, let's do a prisoner swap then, because if your pandas are so valuable, what about our Canadians?
2 pandas, 2 Canadians. That sounds like a good deal.
I think it's a good deal.
Well, we're not going to get anything done about it. And we all know that Trudeau just worships China, man.
This is the thing.
We're heading right there. We're going to be in the biggest surveillance states in the world in a couple of years, man.
Our federal leadership is completely cowed to them that they are so emboldened that they will now attack provincial level and municipal levels to demand compliance and control and bowing to that Chinese CCP state. Right? This is how people don't see how deep this infiltration is. What would happen if this was 1942 Germany and they said, "You've got 2 of our cows, we want them back"? Right? I hear you laughing there because this is exactly how ludicrous things have come. And the byproduct of this that is completely sailing over everybody's head is now we are legitimately a threat and an enemy of the United States of America.
We are. We pose a big threat to Donald Trump, and he knows it.
The big bad character.
If people don't think that the United States of America isn't watching what's going on inside our government, isn't fully aware of the agenda being played out with the Canadian people, we having a 5,000 or 6,000 mile unprotected border with the United States of America, we represent a threat now to him, and he is paying attention. I just hope if it gets to a point where Canadian people are turned on and actually shot on by the powers to be that the United States of America would intervene. And I honestly believe they would. I don't know what you think about that, but I honestly think they would. What do you think?
I can honestly tell you, I cannot share the pictures because of disclosure and security reasons. I was asked not to. But there is literally mobile-mounted 88 millimeter artillery pointed at the Canadian border from the American side of the border. They would not do that if they did not consider this being an actual factor. They are not dumb. And this is something that we need to consider and think about for a second. Even just in the last couple of years, every major terrorist event that has been averted in Canada has been because the United States told us it was happening.
Exactly.
Every incident of arrest is not because our police are doing their job. It's because Americans have intervened and said, hey, get off your asses, put your donuts down, and go look after this. Even in the Nova Scotia event that just happened here, how is it that Americans in the province all got a warning and no Canadians got a warning? Anybody that doesn't believe that Trump is on top of what is happening in Canada is delusional. And this is where he cannot intervene in sovereign nation of Canada because that would make him look like a bad guy to the globalists and they would crucify him. We need to have a little bit of faith, and our men need to take their dangly bits out of their wives' purses and stand up and know that Trump has our backs, regardless of this infiltrated government.
I would agree with a lot you just said because I talk to a couple people down in the States on a regular basis, and, those sentiments were expressed to me almost identically to a friend that I listen to a lot down in the States. And, we are a threat right now to the United States of America. Trump is fully aware of what's going on in Canada. He knows that the Canadian government, for one, is supporting sleeper cells right now in Canada. And if this sounds far-fetched to you guys, or people that are listening, it's not. That sleeper cells are being supported by this government in Canada. That's a fact. And that now the government wants to take our guns away. Well, these groups that are being protected by the government are given access to toys that would just boggle our mind. I honestly believe that. And I've had information passed to me along those lines from reputable sources. It sounds far-fetched, but really, it all comes down to one word. One word is social discourse. And if all of a sudden society starts to go crazy and these guys are given the word go, they're going to turn on the Canadian people. And there's those cells sitting right now in Canada. This government, there's nothing off the table that is out of Trudeau's playbook, okay? Because people got to realize that we're dealing with a very evil psychopath that is just on the purse strings of George Soros, that he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do, and he is a master at dividing society. But it all comes down to the Communist Manifesto, guys. You got to go read it, and I have, and it's right in the playbook.
The thing that we have to be aware of is that these guys are devious and nefarious, and this is a generations-long investment for them. And what we have to be careful of is, I'm not sure if you're aware of a document that came out in 2010, a Rockefeller report, and there's a section in there called Lockstep. And this is where all of this militarized police force, these armored cars in our civilian population, in our police forces, everything is happening for a reason. We are being led to this violent revolt because that is what they need from us to quell us, to silence us. They need us to rise in violence. We cannot give them that. We must rise in peace and love and unity, not in violence. We cannot allow the left to instigate, to goad us into violence. We are seeing organizations like Antifa right now are very quiet because they are going to allow us to build up so that when they do show up, that there is going to be somebody in our crowd on our side of the fence that's going to get triggered, that is going to be the shot heard around the world or around the country, because that is going to justify the actions of this enforcement, the action that they want to put us under. So this is the number one thing, that we cannot fall into their trap. We cannot give them violence. We must every one of us have the courage of that man standing in front of that tank at Tiananmen Square that day. But we need 1 million people to stand with that kind of courage and know that if we do that, they cannot stop us. If we go out in 50, they will stop us. If we go out and show even a temptation of violence, they will stop us, and our opportunity will be gone.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree with you more in the whole world with what you just said right now, Wayne, because in my shows in the last 2-3 years, I basically have said exactly what you have said here in the last couple of minutes, that we cannot go to an armed confrontation against the government. That is where they're goading society right now. That's where
They're expecting it.
They're expecting it. But well, you know what? One thing I talk about, Wayne, that people and people got to grab this just for a second. I know it sounds like something out of Star Trek, but I've said it many, many times on my show that the technology that the government possesses is 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years ahead of what we understand and know about today. And if you think about that for a second, then we could talk about 3 or 4 different things like directed energy. We could talk about nanotechnology, hologram technology. All this technology that we know now is just blowing our minds. We see all this stuff coming. In the same mouthful, we got to realize that we're dealing with people that have technology that's 15 years ahead of that. All that being said, if we go to an armed confrontation, buddy, we are going to get our butts handed to us so quick, it'll make your head spin. And exactly where they want to go, justify the implementation of the Emergencies Act. In comes the United Nations, they kill us all, boom, and believe they have the technology to do that. I honestly believe that, guys, and that sounds crazy, but I honestly believe they have the technology right now that could wipe us all out. I talk about directed energy weapons, frequency weapons, stuff that people just don't even have a clue about. They possess this kind of stuff. Go ahead. And it's crazy, but it's not.
It's not at all crazy, and they're counting on a certain percentage of us that are saying no, they're not taking my boomsticks. I will. They come to my house. Well, okay, great. That's what they want. So we go down one at a time, like in a hail of bullets, like the Alamo. What is that going to tell the rest of the population? Oh, I better not do that. I better turn in my junk, right? Yep. So, and for those groups, these small 3% groups that think that they can go out and have a commune of 200 or even 500 people and stop this, they cannot. A drone will come in there and in 15 seconds it's over. And that just gives them, again, the justification that they need. We've got to leave our firearms. We've got to leave our pitchforks. All we can do is show up in mass with hearts of conviction and faith that if we can collectively come together under one set of demands and force the negotiations. Everything is a negotiation in this world. Everything. And that is one of the big things I think that was missing from the convoy in Ottawa last year. Everybody went with a bunch of gripes and bitches and bellyaches and moans, but they didn't have a list of demands and negotiations that we would hold the line on. This is what Canadians need, is something to hold the line on, and that's, I believe, is Article 2 and Article 7 of the UNHCR.
Got to use I guess we've got to use their agenda against them, buddy. And if it's there in black and white, and it's something that we can grasp. And, of course, talking about Donald Trump, I've got all the people over in Shake and Wake all crumpled and riled up right now because they all, of course, believe that he's 100% globalist. I stand kind of sitting back and watching what's going on in this world right now, and I say to myself, if there wasn't a Donald Trump right now in Washington, what would be happening in this world? If somebody like Hillary Clinton was president of the United States of America right now, would we even have this opportunity? Would we even have this opportunity to be able to speak like we are? And whether Trump is part of the agenda or not, a lot of things tell me that he is. A lot of things tell me that he isn't. I like a lot of things he's done. I like a lot of things that he hasn't. A lot of things he's done I don't like. But I still say right now he's the only beacon of any common sense or anybody that's standing against what we perceive to be the deep state now. If that's all part of an agenda, is that's all part of a planned opposition situation that's been thought out for years and years and years, and he's just a player, I can't answer that question. But I also know that if Hillary Clinton was president of the United States right now, I don't think we'd be having this conversation, period.
We wouldn't. It would already all be over. He's an interrupter, and it would be foolish of us to believe for a second that Trump doesn't answer to somebody. Absolutely, Trump answers to people. But at this moment, at this place and time in history, it's up to us on our own nations to look out, to take care of business, right? This is really where the foundations of our nations and the belief that created them have to surface again. Trump can only play the game as a disruptor of one man against a giant army. Like him or hate him, I'm not a huge Trump fan. A fan of Trump the person. I didn't like him when he came into office, but I have seen him do things that others would not do. I have seen him challenge things that no other politician would do. He is forcing answers and truth that may not be what matters to us 10 years from now, but right now he's...
Well, he defunded the WHO, so that's a first
That's
step.
a huge step.
That's huge.
Right?
Well, yeah, I got to people that are all against Donald Trump. There's a few things that they should be asking themselves. Maybe is why he's the only country in the world that stood against the World Health Organization, recognizes for what they are, have called them out, have them investigated, and has defunded them. Yet we have other countries in the world that are just pouring money in there. Canada has doubled their allotment to the World Health Organization. Well, that should speak volumes. So I keep asking myself, Donald Trump, is he a player? Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head that anybody gets to his position in the world maybe owes something to somebody. But there's a lot of things that he has done that make absolute sense to me.
When you sit down to play a game,
love him or hate him, I just keep saying to people, what else do you have an option? Joe Biden? Is that going to be the next president of the United States? Are you guys out of your mind? You want to see the country fall apart instantly?
I remember what
in like a matter of weeks? And who's he going to get in for vice president? And he's got dementia, man. He's not going to make it. He might get elected, but whoever he picks for vice president is going to step in and fill the role. Who's that going to be? Maybe Hillary. He'll come out of the dead.
He can't remember if he's running for president or Congress.
He doesn't know what state he's in.
Right?
It's a joke. And this is who they're going to run against Donald Trump? Well, I don't think so. I think it's a ploy. I think that he'll name a vice president, and that will be who actually becomes president as soon as he gets presidency.
Pocahontas is running now too, right? So we can't take her out of the mix, right?
Pocahontas. I didn't know that.
Yeah, she announced a couple of days ago. But to get back to Trump for just a quick second, when you sit down to play a game of chess, you don't sit down to play to keep all of your pieces. You sit down to play to keep the last piece, knowing that at some point along the game, you will be sacrificing all of your other pieces. Now, this is a very different mindset when you sit down to start that game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I kind of look at this and I tie it into what I see going on in the world right now with biblical prophecies and what I understand about that. And I look at everything that's going on right now, and the Bible talks about Gog versus Magog, the ruler of the north fighting the ruler of the south. And I really I look at what's going on in the United States of America, and that kind of could be a real possibility in the near future here. It's kind of playing out. I look at lots of other events that are playing out that all kind of point to a certain time, and I'm kind of looking back and going, wow, this is a pretty exciting time. It really is.
It's a scary time. Amazing time in history to be alive. And when it comes to that discussion, I wonder an awful lot about this, and a lot of people are convinced this is prophecies fulfilling, and a lot of what I see that people are taking as prophecies fulfilling, I also see as absolutely within the realm of capabilities with this deep state that we're up against to be smoke and mirrors and Alice in Wonderland. So I question, is this our opportunity before to set things straight for one last time of human enlightenment, or is this actually the end? And the more I dig into this and the more I see what we're up against, the more I think this is exactly what they want us to believe, so we will lay down our swords of truth and just accept that the end times are here. They want us to believe that, and I'm not so convinced yet. I have faith that the man upstairs is bringing us into a time of great peace and enlightenment. This great awakening that is happening is not happening for nothing, and it is happening on a global scale, and it is happening exponentially quicker at this point now than ever in history before. And I really, really think that 2020 is the marker point. It is the year of change. And as much as they're throwing at us, it is they realize the only way that the deep state that is going to win is if they stop Trump in the next election. That is the hinge point in history. Whether he's the good guy or not, it's a matter of the left versus the right, good versus evil, even good soldiers do horrible things in times of war. So I'm not going to judge anybody at this point yet. That's not my place to do. But I think this is the point, and the election is the weapon.
Yeah, we are definitely at a crossroads right now. I think anybody that's looking at what's going on right now would agree that we are at a crossroads right now, that we can't lose this battle that we're in.
All we got to do is look at what Trump did for 4 years and imagine the next 4 years. What happens if he loses and what happens if he wins?
Well, right now I don't see, even though I'm not a Trump, I kind of like I said, I like some of the things he's done, but I'm always standoffish. I always believe that there's an agenda somewhere maybe down the road.
Yep.
But right now what he's doing, I mean, what else choice does America have right now? Do you have another choice? Democrats, look at what they've done in the last 4 years. Look at the unmasking that we're seeing right now. All the names that are being brought forward in acts of high treason, that heads are going to roll in Washington here in the next little while. I honestly believe that. I had information shared with me that absolutely blew my mind, that we better be prepared for social unrest in the United States of America like we've never seen before, due to the unmasking roles of all these government officials in General Flynn. And what Roger Stone is making an unbelievable move right now against the government. I don't know if people are aware of that, how he was treated, how he was houses surrounded by SWAT teams and amphibious forces, and went in for a non-violent warrant on a 62-year-old man. I mean, it's just a joke. It's but it's all coming out right now, guys. So we're going to see, I believe we're going to see some really crazy times here in the next little while. I have no idea exactly where it's going, but I also know that the unmasking, what's coming forward now with all these depositions under oath, that these people that have been telling the American people for 3 or 4 years in a row that they have unbelievable, full proof, absolute proof of Donald Trump's involvement with the Russians to influence the election, are under oath now saying we had nothing.
The Obamagate heads are just starting to roll, and all we got to do...
They're all screwing right now like rats, Wayne, and you can see it.
I know, and it's a thing of beauty. But
it's a thing of beauty, man. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen. But what the result is going to be is also, we're all going Yahoo, Yahoo, Yahoo. But we also got to realize that social discourse and social chaos is part of a mandate, that is part of an agenda. So we've got to sit back and look at this from the outside.
When they have no argument, they have only violence left. And look at what happened after Trump won the election he wasn't supposed to win. The chaos that ensued for the next few weeks was astronomical. What are they going to do when their entire party is behind bars?
Well, that's it. What's that going to do to the whole social situation?
Is going to come unglued, absolutely, and that's the danger. Then, it could very easily turn into the LA riots. The whole country.
It could. We don't know exactly where it's going, but the repercussions are something that we've got to be aware of. That this would absolutely have catastrophic effect. Could have a catastrophic effect on American society if all of a sudden some of these big names are locked up and handcuffs put on them, which we're all waiting for. But we've got to be prepared that there's also possibly an agenda being played out.
Because there is that's going to expose the division within all of the law enforcement states. All of the things in between are going to. The balancing scale is going to be spinning. It's not going to be balancing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting times. We're down to the last couple minutes. You guys want to plug your site?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook under Derek Storie, and you can find my YouTube channel under Noble Savages.
And What's Up Canada? We're as struggling as we might through Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, and BitChute. As much censorship as they're throwing at us, about 85% of my stuff is hidden, but we are still growing faster than any other mainstream news platform in the nation. So I'm proud of the people for that. Thank you so much.
You're definitely out there. You're definitely out there, Wayne, and it's good to see. Canada needs a lot more people. Like
We need voices that aren't afraid. And if there's one thing that I hope to do, being an old white-faced guy, is to show people they don't have to be afraid.
Fear is their biggest weapon, guys.
Yep.
Knowledge
Don't give it to
it all. My hearts go out to people in Kamloops. Snowbird crashed in Kamloops today.
I heard that.
Into a house. And actually, I just got the news feed that it hit in a residential area. So
goodness.
There could be a few people involved. That's 2 in 2 years, guys. And maybe it's time to upgrade our aircraft.
That's
anyway.
a whole other show.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring that in, but it just came to me, so I had to pass that on. Hey, guys, it's always a pleasure talking to you two gentlemen, and we're going to have to do this again in the very, very near future. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
God bless.